All right, this is Sports for Real with Coach Hall on this special Monday night football night. Got two games kicking off. You got the Jaguars kicking off 7:30 up in Orchard Park. They're going to take on the Bills. 0-2 versus 2-0. Jags in desperate need of a victory, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Then you have another game taking place between Washington and Cincinnati. That is a second game. I'm not sure what time they kick. It's going to be something around probably 8:15 normal Monday night football countdown. So I don't want to talk too long because I know that you guys are ready for some football like I am. So let's get to it. All right. The topic of tonight's discussion is, are coaches worth the salaries they make? We often talk about what the players make and whether they should get this or whether they should get that, why they're holding out for contract disputes and so on and so forth. But really, does the same conversation come up when it comes to coaches? I've observed over the years that no matter how much a coach makes, they still make a lot of bonehead decisions, much in the way of players. It doesn't make a difference how much they make. They oftentimes make a lot of bad decisions. And because of that, we criticize them. But what about the coaches? So I'm going to start out by sharing my screen. And again, I know this is Monday Night Football, and I know everybody wants to get to the game. So I'm going to make this a short live, but a worthwhile live. Here is a picture of the USC Trojans on the sideline last Saturday against Michigan. Give you a little backdrop. Michigan came into the game struggling on offense. They don't have a quarterback. They benched the one that they've been starting for a more versatile running quarterback, but he can't throw. Knowing this, USC comes into the game as almost if they had no idea what Michigan was going to do. And Riley, this is his third year at USC. The first year he made $20 million. Last year he made $10 million. This guy is well paid for several coaches. So you would think that if a guy like me who's sitting around watching this stuff, all right, let me make sure I'm sharing. So you would think that a guy like me who's sitting around watching this stuff would could be able to tell what's going on. You would think a high paid coach should be, right? Well, not so fast. As I watched this game, and I knew as it unfolded by the first half of the first quarter that Michigan can throw the ball. But yet they standing up in that offense where you run the shotgun and they run the back and they pulling guards and they're doing all this, or they pull the quarterback and they run around to the side. Now, Michigan overall controlled the line of scrimmage most of the game, but not quite in the way people think they did. A lot of times they converted on fourth and inches or fourth and one. So yes, they moved the ball. But my question is, the easiest way to stop the run is to pinch down inside and come down from the outside. So when you looked at the game between Michigan and USC, what I saw was the same formation being used over and over and over again. Case in point, this formation right here. Michigan lined up in this formation over and over again. You can't see the whole thing, but what you do see is you got the quarterback, he's reading the end. If this guy is a position that can keep him from getting outside, he's going to hand the ball off. Well, again, if you pinch down inside and crash down hard on the outside, you take away Michigan's running the game. USC then started to get effective with this until the third quarter. I'm not making $20 million a year. Why am I able to see this and you can't? So as much as they fought back to get into the game, I don't think this should have been much of a contest. Now, I think Michigan really was able to keep themselves in the game, not because of the offense, it's because of their defense. They was rushing that double zero. He was crashing hard, doing the same things that USC should have been doing. And it made the difference, especially early in the game. It took USC a long time to get on track. But despite that, once the game got settled down, USC had the ball. All they needed was a first down, and the game was over. This man called two screens in a row, And the quarterback almost threw an interception 2 times in a row. But the big part of that was it stopped the clock. And they had been stuffing Michigan all second half. But lo and behold, and you knew it was coming, they run the same offense when the game was on the line. And they missed the tackle at number 20. He was tough all day. He broke off one long touchdown run, and he broke off one run to get him in position to score. So after the game, the traditional, oh, we play Michigan football and we're tough, and those guys in LA, they can't stop this. They're not used to the Big Ten. So I'm listening to this brouhaha, and I'm thinking, I've seen Michigan get whipped by USC numerous of times. I've seen USC whip Ohio State several times. And I've seen them go through all the other teams in the Big Ten several times. So if this is their first time and they lost their first game in the Big Ten, why is that any big deal as being one time you play them any other time? So don't give me that crap about the Big Ten and how tough they are and they wasn't used to all this crap. That's all crap. This game came down to the coach, Lincoln Kennedy, and he pretty much blew this game. It had nothing to do with the Big Ten. Because if the Big Ten was so great and you playing Michigan football, you would have been able to play action and hit receivers wide open like they were doing the last couple of years, and it wouldn't have been none of that talk. So miss me with that Big Ten crap, because that did not apply in this particular case. What applied is USC's $10 million coach didn't scheme the game all the way out, and when it counted the most, he laid an egg. He admitted as such that he could have called that last drive better, but even still, it came down to making plays, and that number 20, he was running tough. He ran through 3 or 4 tackles. All they had to do was bite him on the leg, and he probably would have went down. They didn't do that, and it cost USC the game. But Lincoln Riley's got to do a better job. And one thing I am saying that's in their favor, he finally put together a defense that can play. Now, we got to find a way to get off the field, but you got to expect that most teams, they're going to be able to throw the ball a bit better than what Michigan does, and they're not going to be going for it every fourth down because they had to. So if I'm a college football team, I should be able to get 10 yards rushing if it takes me 4 downs to do it. And that's what I saw last week with USC. It came down to the coaching, not the players. Next thing I want to talk about, we saw yesterday that the Ravens went to Dallas to take on McCarthy and his Cowboys. There's a shot of Coach McCarthy right there. This is a Cowboys coach, and whether anybody say it or not, he's always going to be on the hot seat as long as Jerry Jones is around. And the way they finished the season last year, that didn't make him look good. Yeah, he saved himself a little bit when they blew out Cleveland to open the season, but opening games is who comes up with the best game plan tends to work best on opening day. But you've seen the real teams when you get to week 2, and you saw the Cowboys get run off by the Saints, and then yesterday they got run off by the Ravens. Now, we talked about Lincoln Riley and the mistakes he made against the Michigan, but I saw a lot of mistakes that Dallas made against the Ravens. Now, I've been telling you guys, to anybody who wants to listen, that if you're going to beat the Ravens, you got to beat them one way. You have to stop the run, and you have to corral Jackson. And if you do all that, now he becomes a different player if he has to stand back there and throw the ball. But if you allow him to run the football, and he's allowed to get outside, hell, it becomes pick your poison. And that's what it looked like, especially coming out of the gates in the second half. Henry running wild. Why? Because you're trying to focus on Jackson instead of trying to seal up the middle. Now, this is also an ironic case of deja vu, if you ask me. Henry, he lives in Dallas. He wanted to play for the Cowboys, I guess, so he can stay home. And I guess he always wanted to be a Cowboy. Plus, the Cowboys needed somebody who can run it up in there. Well, instead of signing Henry, they just let the time tick on that, and they end up with getting Zeke back from New England. Well, he's not holding up the way that Henry is. Henry's got this nutrition routine, and the man looks like he ain't been in the league for 3 or 4 years, despite all the punishment he's taken throughout college and high school and even in the pros. He just don't look like he has that wear and tear. So it would have been a no-brainer to me if the Cowboys would have signed Henry, but for whatever reason they chose not to do it. Well, after Henry ran through him yesterday, Jones came out and said, "Well, we couldn't afford Henry. That's why we didn't sign him." What do you mean, Jerry Jones, that you cannot afford Derrick Henry? Isn't the Cowboys one of probably the richest franchise in the NFL? All the money they generate, and you telling me that the Cowboys can't afford Derrick Henry? That's garbage. You paid your quarterback all that money. You're gonna have to pay CD Lamb if you didn't already pay CD Lamb. You're gonna have to pay your stars. So all you need is a running back to take the pressure off that high-paid quarterback you got. He laid an egg, and the fans are roasting him for it. But back to the Ravens. I'm not letting them off the hook because I told you that the Ravens was going to do well in the regular season like they always do. Why? Because the real defensive coordinators, they are building a profile for what you do as the season go on. They're going to tweak their game plans. They're going to look at that plan. Oh, if I run into the Ravens in the playoffs, what must I do? What adjustments have they made from week to week? How can we stop Henry? What can we do? It's on the wall. They look at it all year long. And if you look at this formation right here, this is an example of what you have. Chiefs wide. They're going to pinch down in the middle. And when Jackson tries to read and runs this way or try to bounce outside, they're going to be there to make a tackle. The other thing they have to do, they have to tackle that back when he gets the ball. They did that in the AFC Championship game. They did that in week 1 against the Ravens. Even with Henry, I told you that they only have one football. And because they only have one football, Henry and Jackson can't run the ball at the same time. So the same principles apply to stop the Ravens. You have to stop the run between the tackles. I don't give a damn if it's Franco Harris, Jim Brown, Emmitt Smith running the ball 3 plays in a row. If you don't stop that, then that's going to open up Jackson for him to run around. Then he's going to hit his little rinky-dink 5 to 7 yard passes in the flat, and you're going to say, "Oh, what a great job he's doing." Hell, I can throw a 7-yard out now, and I'm twice his age. So he's not doing anything great. So if you stop that run, he can't run outside, and you make him a passer, oh, you got a problem. The Ravens got a problem. But I can't understand why coaches like Mike McCarthy and Lincoln Riley, when put into position to have to perform, I don't understand why they can't come up with a plan to slow the Ravens. It's not hard. I'm not making $20 million. McCarthy's not making 20 million either, but he's still making anywhere from 4 to 7 million easy. So he's sitting there all starstruck trying to figure out how to stop the Ravens, but it's simple. Look at the game plan. It's out there. The precedent has been set. All you got to do is hit Henry. You got to stop that building before he gets started. If he gets to running wild like he did yesterday, oh, it's going to be hard to beat. But like I said, it's the same thing you've seen before. Doesn't matter who's running the football. You got to stop him between the tackle. And the Cowboys haven't figured that out. Just like it took Riley a long time to figure out something that was elementary for what I can see house looking at the game. So, all right. So I haven't said that. Let me move on a little bit. All right. So tonight, I'll give you the preview. You have the Jaguars, who are up in Buffalo, getting set to kick it off against the Bills. The Jaguars, they blew the game against the Dolphins. They had that game won. They lost it in the end. Then they came to Cleveland came home to face Cleveland thinking that was going to be a good get well game. That didn't end right for them. They lost that in the end. So now they go to Buffalo, who's 2-0 without a win. But the good thing about it is, in situations like this, the desperate team usually wins these kind of games. So I'm thinking that Jacksonville, because of the desperation they face and the desperation of the swirling availability of certain coaches around that's not in the league right now that wants to be back in the league, that they could possibly take over and be the new head coach of Jacksonville. I've seen it in reports I don't think it's going to happen. I think Jags going to turn it around a little bit, but they cannot start off 0-4. And that's a sure sign that the coach is going to be fired because the owner, Shad Khan, has come out and said, well, we got all the pieces in place. You got the facility. There's no more excuses. It's time to play. Quarterback, you got your money. It's time to play. So Peterson, he's riding with Trevor Lawrence, and the fans, they losing confidence in him. He's going to have to stand in there and throw the ball. And tonight is a prove-it night for the Jaguars. If they can go into Buffalo, which they've done many times before, if they can knock off Buffalo, then they'll be right back in it. But if they're 0-3 having to go to Houston, they could be looking at an 0-4 start. And that's when things really start to get hot around here because, like I said, the owner, Shad Khan, he's talking about replacing people without actually saying it. But if you've been around pro sports long enough, you know exactly what that means. But like I say, my predictions for tonight, I think Jacksonville will somehow find a way to get this win because they're desperate. The Bills, not so much, but you don't know how good they are. Both teams played the Bills. The Bills have had the Dolphins number for a while now, and Jacksonville dominated Miami. They just blew it in the end. If ETN doesn't fumble, then we're probably talking about a 2-0 Jacksonville team instead of 0-2. But that's just the way it goes. They're going to have to step in there and play tonight. And I think my prediction, I think they're going to get it done. Speaking of the Jaguars, my connection with them, no, I'm not. I'm not like that, a fan so much. You saying, but I am with a connection with this new media, independent journalism called Fango Media. And what I'm doing after the Jaguar home games, I'll be interviewing the fans, getting their reactions immediately after home games. So they're on the road this week. They're going to Houston next week, and they'll be back home October 6th against the Colts. I'll be right out there getting the reaction from the fans. But I expect the Jaguars to somehow pull this one out, not because I care that they do, but they have to do it. They have to justify their positions. The coach, he needs to justify himself. Definitely the quarterback, he's got to get it done because the fans are on his case about this big money you making and you hadn't proved anything. So now it's a prove-it night for the Jaguars. And finally, and I know they probably kicked it off already, but I got to get this last point in. Last night you saw the Chiefs get it on with the Falcons. Why am I talking about this game? Well, in education, they have this thing called Bloom's Taxonomy. So again, they have this thing in education called Bloom's Taxonomy. And what that is a series of approaches that you will use to be a well-rounded lesson. You have to have certain things. And it was 7 components at the time, and I know it's changed a little bit since then, but I don't really necessarily need to know that anymore. I can go with the original 7 and be great. But the way I figured out how that worked was I applied it to football. Anything that I have trouble relating to, if I give a football relationship to it, I can pretty much figure out the meaning of it. And that's what I did in this particular case. So it was interesting to me, and every time this comes up, I find it interesting because, like I say, that Bloom's Taxonomy in education is the way I figured it out was KCAASE. So that's knowledge, comprehension, analysis. I forget what that last one is, synthesizing and evaluation. So the way I came to know that was Kansas City at Atlanta, 7 Eastern. Now, this has happened a couple of times since I came across this knowledge, and last night was one of them. Kansas City played Atlanta. It wasn't 8 o'clock Eastern, but it was 7 o'clock Central Time. So that fit right into my little knowledge of Bloom's Taxonomy. So again, Kansas City at Atlanta, 7 Eastern was the way I came to understand what Bloom's Taxonomy meant. And that is a key component of education down here in Florida. So sometimes you have to find ways to make sense out of things that otherwise you may not catch. And that's one way I was able to do that. All right. So just recap. Lincoln Riley, the football team is playing a lot better defensively. They didn't make a couple key tackles down the stretch, but there's no reason why USC shouldn't have beat Michigan by 10 points. I don't care what Michigan say about their brand of football. they can't win very many games like that against good teams. USC is a good team, but the combination of mistakes from the players and then the obvious mistakes that the coaches were making, uh, it's kind of difficult to swallow when you're sitting there watching it and you see it all fall apart. And you got a coach that's on the sideline, he can't seem to catch on to what's going on. But there's no reason in the world that if one team, they weren't steamrolling you like they made it out to seem. You making some good plays in there. It just took them 4 downs to make a play. They were going 4 downs because they had to go 4 downs. And if these two teams were to play again, it would be a completely different game. But Michigan's not going to see USC anymore this year because Michigan, they'll be lucky to win no more than 4 games. But when they get to Ohio State, unless something changes, there's no way they're going to be able to compete with Ohio State. They got a couple other games on there. Washington, they waiting to see them after last year. So it's a tough road to hold for Michigan. And they're going to have to find a quarterback. But what they got right now, it's not getting the job done, and it's going to make it tough for them as they move forward. But USC is clearly the better team, and in the end, I think they're going to end up much better off than Michigan because they got a defense they can travel with. They got a quarterback that can put it in there, and they can't run the ball. It's just a matter of how many mistakes they're going to make along the way. And the Cowboys, McCarthy might be on the hot seat right along with the Jaguars, Doug Peterson, if he don't hurry up and turn it around. Another 2 losses in a row, I don't think McCarthy's going to last much longer in Dallas. So they can have all these big money contracts. You sign your receiver, you sign your quarterback, but you didn't go get the right running back. You went back into the past to get Zeke Elliott when you missed on a guy who wanted to get drafted by you. You missed that one. Then as a free agent, he still wanted to play for you, and you didn't want to sign him. So that's a loss on the Cowboys. And Henry stuck it right in the eye yesterday. He said, take that. But like I said before, the way to beat the Ravens, there's only one way. You have to stop the run between the tackle. Cowboys didn't do that. Because that, it allowed Jackson to run to the left, run to the right. They didn't stop him. And that allowed them to run that play action pass where they run a little 5-7 yard route in the flat, seal the game. Nothing spectacular. But to me, the regular season Ravens are going to roll on, but in the playoffs, they're going to meet the same end because they're not, well, I won't even say it. They can do what they want to do, but from what I see, what they're doing is not going to work. And finally, Jaguars, they got to win tonight. I think they're going to find a way to pull it off. And also, the Bloom's Taxonomy, I had to tie that to sports. And Kansas City at Atlanta, 7 Eastern, that attributes to all of Bloom's Taxonomy for anybody out there who understands exactly what I'm talking about. So enjoy the game tonight. This has been Sports for Real. I'll catch you on the other side. I'm out.